Hey everyone, I'm Rather Incoherent. Today, I want to talk about Seekers being broken. Gotta talk about this at least every couple of months because Seekers are just clearly the best class in the game, and today I'm going to be showing you by virtue of compare and contrast, right? I'm going to go through every class, talk about what they specialize in, and what they're weak to. For Guardians, I'll be going from least complicated to most complicated, that's why we're starting with Guardians, they're super simple. They specialize in killing enemies, and their strength, or their weakness rather, is that they're bad at foot treacheries, making them weak to the Mythos phase. Now, originally, it seemed like it was going to be the plan for Guardians to be the guy that does the team support, with cards like Stand Together and Let Me Handle This, but there hasn't really been much support for that. Other classes have gotten their own forms of team support, and I don't think Guardians are actually meaningfully better than anyone else. Like, Mystics have Ward of Protection and Promise of Power, and just those two cards on their own is all you really get out of Mystics for team support, but they also all run them, and they're way better than anything Guardian is doing for team support, which is why I'm not putting it here as a strength for Guardians. Then we come over to Rogues. They have a really strong economy, the best in the game, and they have ways to leverage this. They have the big money archetype, or they just have a bunch of really expensive, powerful cards like Leo DeLuca and Intel Report, where paying for them is clearly a strength. They are the best at leveraging foot, and they have the highest foot. I personally think this archetype needs some more support, but they are the best at it, and I can't take it away from them. And their weakness has always been their low head. At this point in the card pool, you could legitimately say they don't have a weakness, but you're still playing around it, right? Like, you have to put Savant and you handle this one, or big money resistance, whatever you're doing. When you make your deck, you're planning around this, so I think it's still a weakness, even though it's one that you can mitigate. Which is true of the Guardians too, right? They can use cards like Own the Hunt and Take the Initiative to either not draw the foot test or be good at the foot test. I would say that it's still a weakness if you're planning around it during deck building. Coming over to Survivors, they have the cheapest cards. It's not good economy, but it's functionally the same, and the best Mythos resilience in the game. They don't have Ward of Protection and Promise of Power, so you can argue it's not the best, but in terms of their base stats, they have the highest combined defensive stats of any class in the game. They're really, really good at that. And their weakness is they tend to have bad proactive stats. There are fighters like Yorick and Silas who have 4 in their fist, but they don't have great ways of boosting that in class, and most of them don't even have base 4s. Like Wendy Adams is one of the best characters in the game. She's at 3 book. Stella's insane. She's got 2 book, 3 fists. They have bad proactive stats, and when you build their decks, you have to plan around this. Coming over to Mystics, all of this is really one thing. They're a single stat class that only uses head, resulting in great Mythos resilience, which is added to by their card pool, admittedly. And due to the nature of arcane assets being able to do anything, they can all perform any role, so you can make them flex or fight or clue find. And if you're a flex, you can tilt to the exact amount you need to for a given scenario. It's just really customizable in that respect. This is all just like, they're the one stat class, and this is all a result of that. And that's super efficient, but they have 2 weaknesses, unlike most of these classes, and they're way more important than these other weaknesses. They've got bad draw. Scroll of Secrets is sick, but nothing else is really good draw in the class. They do have Scroll of Prophecies, but that costs 3, and they have a bad economy, so they can't afford to play it, because really all they get is Uncage the Soul, and some of them get Voice of Ra if they're playing a token build, or if they're specifically Jacqueline, they can use Voice of Ra. They can bend their deck a little bit out of shape and use something like Olive McBride, to get around not being able to use Voice of Ra, but that's getting real jank to fix this. It's still something you're planning around. During deck construction, the 2 biggest questions you have to ask on every Mystic is how am I drawing my cards, how am I paying for them? So in spite of being a very clearly super optimized thing that Mystics are doing, it's a very clear set of weaknesses to counterbalance it. Now before I click next and go to Seekers, I want to remind you that what Seekers are doing is fundamentally really strong. Investigating is the best basic action in the game. It's how you progress the game. Seekers specialize in being book-based investigators with a low fist. So their statline problem, the low fist, doesn't make them worse in the Mythos phase. And their core identity is really good. And you would think then maybe they would have 2 weaknesses as well, but they don't even really have one. I'll get to this in a second. And you would think they wouldn't have a plethora of other strengths, but that is not the case. Let's deal with low fist first. Let's talk about how this isn't a weakness. Because I didn't say that they can't kill enemies. No, they have low fist. Those are different things. They have plenty of ways of killing enemies. They have great ways, Occult Lexicon and Ancient Stones, but they have other ways that are still fine. They have I've Got a Plan, Occult Invocation. They have, what's it called? Acidic Ichor, that version of Strange Solution, they have that. There's probably more that aren't as good that I'm not thinking of. They can definitely manage enemies. I played through Forgotten Age with 2 Seekers, neither of which were actually good at managing enemies. Harvey, Joe, and Ursula were all not on that team, and they still got through the campaign. And only, like, they struggled, but they never lost. It was wild. They absolutely don't suffer from this. In fact, low fist is a weakness, but that's a lie, because it's actually right here too. They have optimized stat lines. Because if every character gets 12 points and all of the Seekers have 1 or 2 in their fist, that results in one of two things. You get 5 in your book, or you get really good defensive stats. Seekers have a ton of 5-book characters, more than any other class, probably as many as all other classes put together in fact, and then most of their characters, in spite of having 5-book, have fine defensive stats. Most rogues are envious of 3-3 defensively, but Mandy has a 5 in book and still gets 3-3 defensively. Their stat lines are super optimized, because this weakness is actually just a strength. So if this was all it was, it might be okay, but instead we have 4 more things to talk about. 2 of these are not debatable. They have the highest draw in the game, bar none. Deep Knowledge, Mr. Rook, that's already the best draw in the game, but we keep going. They have Preposterous Sketches, Cryptic Research. Perception level 2 is actually one of the best draw skills in the game, up there with Unrelenting, because you can use it immediately all the time. Practice Makes Perfect is specifically drawing the best cards in your deck and duplicating them. By the way, it might draw Perception, which is itself a draw card. They have the highest mobility. Shortcut, Pathfinder, Eon Chart, there might be more, but those are the 3 that you actually need. Hiking Boots, that one's also pretty good. They are the unparalleled best at drawing cards and moving around. They didn't need to have either of those strengths. They were already really good without them. But they also have these 2, which are more debatable. Let's start with High Economy. They have the best economy outside of Rogues, and it's so much better than the other 3 classes that I think it's worth mentioning as one of their strengths. If you look at Guardian-specific economy, it's basically just Stand Together. For Mystics, it's basically just Voice of Ra and Uncage the Soul, and as said earlier, Voice of Ra's not that great. And Survivors have good economy in the roundabout way of their cards being cheap, but if they actually want to make money, it's like, take card and that's it. They don't really make money. But if you look at Seekers, every single run of them can run Burning the Midnight Oil, Crack the Case, and they can also go further. They're all running Practice Makes Perfect. They can run Mr. Rook to make sure his Astounding Revelation goes off. That's more and better economy than most classes get. And I'd be out of line if I didn't mention while talking about their incredible economy that they won't double taboo cards. The current philosophy of the game is they chain a card or they mutate it. So they can't chain Milan. If they make him cost 3 experience, he's broken at 3 experience with his original effect, so instead they've mutated him to have a different effect. But his current effect is to make a resource every turn and +1 to your do something stat. Rogues can't even get a +1 foot ally. Foot, not a good stat, +1 foot, without spending an experience on Cat Burglar. Just constant +1 to your primary stat is an experience card. Beat Cop is like the only thing that comes to mind that does that at level 0. And Beat Cop's effect is to commit suicide to do something, right? Beat Cop has a one-of effect, it's not recursive, and it's not nearly as good as Milan. Milan, in his current state, is like a 2 experience ally. They keep printing cards to compete with Milan, like Jeremiah Kirby, and then nerfing them to 2 experience because that's what Milan is worth. So when you print a card to compete with them at level 0, it's overpowered and you have to nerf it. So until they're willing to do multiple types of taboo simultaneously, Milan will always be there, warping the level 0 ally and the economy of Seekers to be better than it should. And then coming over to high team support, that's not a meme. Carson should be going Seeker. They are incredible. First of all, if you wanted to, you could use Practice Makes Perfect to give your skills to another character. You shouldn't, there's no reason to do that, but you can. There's generally no reason for a Seeker to support anyone because they're going to be the most important person on the team, but if they wanted to, Deep Knowledge and Cryptic Research can be played on your teammates. Crack the Case can give them the money. You can run Archival Conduits to be the best viewer in the game, and not only are you doing it the fastest, but you're also drawing your team cards by keeping them alive, so you're not just wasting the actions healing, you're actually drawing and doing something. Shortcut can move your teammates outside of their turn. No other card in the game can do that. Yes, Safeguard can move you outside of your turn, but moving your teammates out of turn order is something that's only done by one card in the game, and it is a level 0 fast event for some reason. Oh, it also costs 0, because God forbid it costs money. A big part of their incredible economy is that most of their cards are just undercosted. Like, why on earth is Magnifying Class 1 cost and fast at level 0? It's just ridiculous. Lantern is worse than Magnifying Class, and it costs 2 in a class that specializes in cheap cards. Like, what's going on with Seekers? Everything goes so well for them. Before I wrap up, coming back to high team support for a second, they actually do have a lot of help for your team in terms of Mythos resilience if you want to go that route too. They can take the Eye of Truth, which is just Promise of Power with upside. That's a lot of experience. They generally don't want to do that. That will mostly happen in Forgotten Age, really. But they can also go down the clue dropping archetype. And if they do that, Maelstrom is actually the best Mythos negation card in the game. Maelstrom level 1 is absolutely wild. It's It's a 1 cost, 1 experience. Is he 2? I think he's 1. He's probably 2. I think it's a 1 cost, 2 experience ally that is essentially just Gloria with 2/2 soak. Because Gloria will like look at them and sort them out and hand them out, but if you just let people draw them naturally and when somebody gets something terrible, you just tell them to draw 2 and discard 1, that tends to be about the same effect that Gloria had with less stumps. The problem with Seekers is that they do everything. During a game of Arkham, you're going to have to move around, draw your cards, play them, and get clues. Killing enemies is technically optional, not that Seekers can't do that. But Seekers are the best at moving around, the best at drawing your cards, one of the best at playing them. By the way, all their cards are getting clues. They specialize in that thing that actually wins the game. And they also have super optimized stat lines because their weakness is just a strength. And I want to cover one more thing before I wrap up just how broken this is, because it's not something I've listed here, because I don't really know how to word it. But they have the most focused card pool in the game. If you look at the Seekers, every single one of them is a book-based investigator that gets clues. They printed Joe Diamond. He could have been a fist-based fighter, but he's at best a flex. He's still a book-based investigator. They printed a gimmick character that specializes in investigating with book repeatedly and duplicating deductions and getting clues. Every single Seeker they've ever printed just investigates with book. Whereas if you come to Guardians, they're direct parallel. They just fight with fist. They have team support Carson. They've got investigator Carolyn. Their Edge of the Earth character over here, Lily Chen, specializes in using not firearms, so she doesn't work with the rest of the card pool, really. Nathaniel Cho is specialized in fighting with events, not guns again. Sister Mary is specialized in doing blessed stuff. So even a lot of the characters that are actually still fighters are like diverging and fighting in really different ways. But there are 2 characters that explicitly aren't fighters at all, whose card pools when they were printed didn't support the rest of the cast. But all of these characters investigate with book. They do the exact same thing the exact same way, so every time a new character got printed, they printed cards for Amanda, they work in Daisy. Min works in Daisy. Rex works in Daisy. It doesn't matter which character they printed, all the cards with that character work in all the previous characters. So their card pool is really, really robust. Whereas if you compare to Rogues, yeah, they're the Foot Matters class, but Ginny has 3 across all the stats. Safina was secretly a mystic. Preston Fairmont's a gimmick investigator that doesn't get cards like anyone else does. Tony's a 5-fist fighter and Trish is a 4-book seeker. Like, a lot of the characters in Rogue are not actually built around the Rogue identity. Their card pool is not focused. Survivor, as I mentioned earlier, has the least homogenous class pool. They're all very, very different. The cards that support Ashcan and Daryl and Patrice and Stella are all completely different cards. There are like no overlapping cards, there's no Wendy and a Silas deck, but virtually every Seeker is probably running at least 10 identical cards, maybe even 20. So yeah, Seekers just have the most focused card pool. Mystics are the only people competing with them, but with Mystics and they keep printing characters that do the same thing, they throw a wrench in. They keep printing arcane assets that are mutually exclusive. You just have 4 different flavors of deal damage for charges, instead of just getting new events that get clues in different ways and you can pick the ones best for your character and your campaign. I think that'll be it for now. It's hard to summarize why Seekers are the best class because it's everything. They have the most robust card pool, the best stat lines, the best draw, the best mobility, they're great at team support, they've got a wonderful economy that's only rivaled by Rogues, and they specialize in progressing the game in the most consistent way. Every single thing about Seekers is turned to 11, and they've never deviated at all. Even when they were given the chance to with gimmick characters or flex fighters, they always backed out. Do you want to make Vincent Lee a dedicated team support character that can flex fight? Yeah, but make sure to give him 4 book and access to, like, red cards so he can draw a million cards with Take Art and out of Crossroads, and then he can just investigate with Deduction really consistently, too. And like, they gave Vincent Lee this really interesting thing where he can play with Runic Axe, but he still benefits from the entire card pool before him, because he's still a 4-book Seeker. He could have had 3 book, he could have been a fighter like Joe, he could have been different, but instead, he still fits neatly within an archetype, but for some reason the other classes aren't done that way. You get fighters that don't fight the same. You get characters that don't fight at all in the fight class. So yeah, Seekers are the favorite child of the group, and it sucks for everyone else. I've been rather incoherent. Hope you enjoyed hearing me rant about Seekers being OP. Again, if you did enjoy the video, like, comment, subscribe. All that stuff really does help the channel grow, and I greatly appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next one.